Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, a fresh take on pre-approval inspection data, presented by Redica Systems CEO, Michael Delatorre. If you have any questions during the presentation, please use the chat features. After we're done today, I'll send out a copy of the slides, answers to all the questions we receive, and a recording of the presentation. Before we begin, I just want to quickly introduce myself. My name is Taylor Minks, and I am the marketing lead at Redica Systems. Again, today's presenter is Michael Delatorre, CEO of Redica Systems, and I'll pass it on to him to begin the webinar.
Hi, everybody. All right, we are just going to jump right in. I think we have Taylor, if they have a comment or a chat, they can just put it in to the section, then we'll kind of address them at the end of the webinar. We should have some time to kind of engage in the discussion, right?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. All right, as Taylor said, my name is Michael Delatorre, CEO of Redica Systems, and hopefully we have a an interesting agenda for everybody today. So, first question: is this webinar for you? It's probably not for you if you don't yet know what a PAI is. It's a pre-approval inspection by the FDA. If you don't like data, this is not for you. Or if you came for the Starbucks gift card, this webinar is not for you because we don't have Starbucks gift cards. Okay, but if you work for GXP quality, for life sciences or consulting, in compliance, inspection prep, vendor quality, vendor evaluation, audit, etc., or quality training, this webinar probably has something interesting for you and data that you've never seen before. So what are we going to cover today? So we're just going to do a quick background on Redica and some thank yous, 2 minutes at most. We are going to look at the pre-approval inspection volume trends. So pre-COVID, during COVID, post-COVID, which regions have bounced back, which regions are still lagging. Then we're going to go into 483 issuance rate by region, by inspection type, et cetera. What are the trends there? Then we're going to look at some specifics, kind of some deep dives into how to look at different FDA inspectors. Like, are they all the same? Are they very different? And what are those differences and what drives some of those differences? Then we're going to look at, the specific top issues that we're seeing on pre-approval inspections. So these are an analysis that we've done on 483 observations. And then we're going to further go into potentially critical issues being found on inspections at top sponsors and top CMOs. And then finally, to wrap it up, we'll have a short commercial with some screenshots of the Redica platform. Once again, that'll be less than 2 minutes. We're going to focus most of the content on items 2 through 6 on the data. So who is Redica Systems? Very quickly. So we are a quality and regulatory intelligence platform. So it's data, analytics, visualizations and reports, and then workflows, all with the purpose of empowering quality and regulatory professionals in life sciences with actionable data intelligence. So we have over 200 customers in life sciences, from large global pharma sponsors to clinical stage biotech to some of the largest med tech companies, consultants, law firms, et cetera. We have some sample representative customers on the left. And really what makes us different is our unmatched data sets. So we get most of our information from Freedom of Information Act. We have thousands, tens of thousands more documents than you've ever seen or even knew existed. We have two kind of primary things we do. We do regulatory monitoring, so regulations, standards, changes, et cetera. And then we have a analytical data platform that goes into inspections and enforcement. Okay. So the data that we're going to be talking about today, as I said, is very different from anything that you've ever seen. So we talk about here, it's like, okay, well, can I get all of this from the FDA data dashboard? The simple answer is no, a resounding no. We have many orders of magnitude of data than you've ever seen. A simple comparison, on the FDA's website, they have around 250,000 inspections. We have almost 900,000, not counting the inspections we have from other agencies. FDA over the last 10 years has released about 3,000 documents on inspections. We have over almost 60,000. We retype every single 483 observation into kind of searchable, analyzable text. We're going to go through that, some of the output of that. We have inspection reason. We have the actual inspectors on those inspections. And so just lots of data sets that we get from Freedom of Information Act. We then augment that. We're not going to be going through this today, but we also have data sets from EMA, Health Canada, and MHRA, which we run through kind of similar cleaning and tagging. So at the end of the day, we have data that you've never seen. We have analytics that you've never seen, and hopefully it'll be beneficial for you today. Okay. Special thank you to Jerry Chapman, who helped do the hard work on creating our labeling models, machine learning frameworks that we did, and his sage wisdom on kind of turning all of this unstructured data into kind of simple labels. Also, big thank you to Jason Kerr for all the data wrangling and a lot of the analytics that you'll see in this presentation. He did the hard work of getting all the data laid out and getting it put together. And then finally, Barb Unger, who's been a mentor of mine for years. She's been known for her kind of warning letter analytics that she puts together for the industry and for us. And, kind of a lot of the original ideas that we do here kind of came from her. So thank you to all three of you. Okay, without further ado, now the questions. So we had some pre-webinar questions that we asked to all of the attendees that signed up. And the first one was, FDA drastically cut back on PAI activity during COVID. Do you think they bounced back? Okay. And so here were the results. So we had 138 respondents. So 12% of you said you had no idea. 11% of you said under 50% of pre-COVID levels. About half of you said about 50% of pre-COVID levels. Some kind of said bounce back, but not all the way. And then very, very few of you think that the FDA has bounced all the way back from pre-COVID. Now let's go see what the data tells us. Okay. Very complicated chart, lots going on here. So I'm going to take this piece by piece. Let's talk about what is on here. So this is pre-approval inspections by region. So we have Canada, US and Canada at the bottom here in dark, Asia Pacific right here, this next slice. The next slice is Europe, and then the rest of the world. So as you see, if you're not in Asia, if you're not in Europe, or if you're not in the US, not a lot of pre-approval inspections were happening pre-COVID or after COVID. And so what you see here, so we have the 2022 PACE right here. So this isn't how many inspections. So there've actually been 105 inspections. We had the cutoff date of May 25th, but you just do the pacing for the rest of the year. They're on pace for 266 inspections for the rest of the year, which is roughly what they were doing prior to COVID in 2019. But if you also look at this, they dropped precipitously from 2017 to 2019, and we're kind of almost bouncing back to this level. So there's a couple takeaways from this chart. So the first is, PAI inspections were dropping pre-COVID, okay? The next is, wow, if you were to look at this and just kind of draw a simple, area chart, there's at least a backlog of 300 PAI inspections that were created during COVID. And even if we bounce back to previous levels, that's at least a year or two of backlog that needs to be burned through by the FDA. So I would expect, slower approvals, et cetera, from that backlog. And so then pre-approval inspections have bounced back, especially in Europe and North America. You would even argue that North America looks like the levels are higher than what was before COVID. So you down here, this 147 versus kind of this 98. Basically the same for Europe, the 68 versus 72, but Asia is way behind. Now, there's various reasons for this. The Government Accountability Office has, done some different, analytics on, the FDA's foreign inspection program, and FDA talks about like not being able to hire inspectors, not get the volumes, then with COVID restrictions, et cetera. So I think there's a lot of contributing factors to this, but Asia is by nowhere close to what they were pre-COVID, and was already dropping, prior to COVID. So something to be aware of if your CMO is in Asia, if you're a sponsor or generics firm in Asia, these things might take more time than before. So now moving on. Looking at this, so this is a different way to look at the data. So I redid the order here. I put Canada, then Europe. Just looking at, okay, well, if you're in North America or Europe, what's the volume? So there was like kind of 59% on average before COVID, but now that it's dropped up to fully like 75% of the PAI inspections are now being done in the US or Europe. Once again, similar conclusions as the previous slide. It's probably due to COVID restrictions, even still kind of bouncing out of COVID, and then just overall staffing for FDA investigators overseas. And so now moving on. Next question. What do you think is the 483 issuance rate on PAI inspections? This is actually one of my favorite questions. Hint, it's not what you think it is. So of the 138 responses, about a third of you, slightly under a third, or maybe a quarter, thought it was between 0 and 25%. 40% of you thought it was between 25 and 50%. 25%, kind of that 50 to 75% range, and then more than 75, about 8%. Why do you think this is? So I think, having conversations with different industry experts, I think it's because, it's like the Super Bowl, right? It's a pre-approval inspection. You've got years to prepare. You're diligently selecting your CMO. It's you're spending all of this time, digging in and getting prepared, because if this pre-approval inspection goes wrong, or if you have issues, it could lead to a complete response letter and torpedo your entire kind of commercial plan for the product. So that's what you would think. But we're going to see something a little bit different when we get into the data. And so this first chart is just 483 issuance rate across all inspection types in all regions, just for human drugs. Okay, so this is human drugs, 483 issuance rate, just the average, not digging into the subtle nuances that are underlying this data. So it's pretty steady. Got about a 50-50 chance for all human drug inspections of getting a 483. That's pretty, reasonably common knowledge in the industry. You got about a 50-50 shot, but it gets a little more interesting. So, I kind of messed up the animation here. Okay. We've separated it now, once again, so this is just human drug inspections across all regions, but now we say, okay, we have routine inspections, pre-approval inspections, and for-cause inspections. So what you see here is PAI and for-cause inspections are very similar on 483 issuance rate, much different than routine inspections, which are falling. Pre-approval inspections, 483 issuance rate has gone up about 20% since 2017. So not only is a pre-approval inspection pretty similar to a for-cause inspection from an outcome standpoint, it's also going up, whereas routine inspection issuance rate is going down. So if you were to just look at this chart, it's like, oh, 483 issuance rate, nothing to see here. Well, there's a lot to see once you separate it out, by inspection reason. And further, kind of looking at this trend across regions, so we've taken kind of North America, so US and Canada, Europe, and then Asia Pacific, you see these trends holding across regions. So, in the US, 483 issuance rate is a little up, relatively flat, but it's dropping on routine. In Europe, routine inspections, it's dropped precipitously, down to the 20% range, but pre-approval is steadily on its way up. And then, in Asia, it's way up. I mean, you're looking at, 84, 85% chance of getting a 483 on a pre-approval inspection, whereas it's once again dropping for routine. So once again, the patterns hold across regions. 483 issuance rate on pre-approvals is going up, it's dropping on routine, and that pre-approvals are actually closer to for-cause inspections than they are routine inspections. So those are the conclusions to take away. Okay, next question. Do you have an upcoming PDUFA date? If so, when? So most of you said, no upcoming PDUFA date, but some of you have some in 2022, some have it in 2023. And so now we're going to look at some different things about, you know, how to look at inspectors and how to look at some of the top issues that are being cited. Okay, so bonus question. So does my inspector matter? Hint, yes, it does. And how big are the differences between inspectors? Hint, a lot. So this chart is telling you, so who could be your FDA inspector, basically. So there's a lot of unique inspectors that are active in a given year. So all the way back in 2017, there were 338 FDA inspectors that were active on PAI inspections. And that's now dropped to 123. So once again, we talked about, you know, staffing levels within the FDA from FDA inspectors, but it could be any one of, call it a couple of hundred FDA inspectors tend to do these pre-approval inspections. Okay. And when you look at the top 62 FDA inspectors that have more than 8 or more pre-approval inspections since 2017. So this is kind of like the core group of 62 inspectors. Like, what do you see? Well, coming over to this chart on the right, you see that 6 of that 62 issue a 483 100% of the time. Every single PAI inspection, they're going to issue a 483. I've personally spoken to FDA investigators who take pride that they find something to give a 483 on in every single inspection. And I was challenged when they looked at our inspector profile on our platform that I showed that they had one inspection that they didn't give a 483 like 15 years ago. And she was actually angry and upset that that made it into her record, that marred her unblemished record, right? She was like Pete Rose with like, you know, like the hits record, right? And you took away a hit from him, right? She was she had basically a point of personal pride that, you know, there's no pharmaceutical company that is above reproach, and she will find a reason to give a 483 on every single time she goes. And so we see 6 of those in the data set. You know, we see 2 that are in that 90 to 99% range, you know, 3, you know, above this, but the average being here. So this is a pretty dispersed histogram here, right? You get one of these guys here, it's like a kitten, you know, for an FDA inspector, and over here it's like a tiger and you're going to get eaten. So, you know, what we see when we look at, you know, the backgrounds of these FDA inspectors, their temperament, right? Their training, their background, their temperament, etc. You get wildly different outcomes depending on who you get. And the good news is with these pre-approval inspections, as many of you know, you're going to have at least a month of knowing who's going to come, and sometimes as much as 3 months. And so, you know, it's one of the things that we have in our platform is, you know, deep dives into their full kind of citation and inspection history. But certainly you see here that it definitely matters who you're going to get, and that kind of last mile preparation, knowing who's coming and knowing what they do is going to be critically important for that because of these you know, differences. And so then, okay, so what are the top findings on PAI inspections? You know, are they, you know, just garden variety of like, you know, small little issues, or are they potentially critical issues that could torpedo your pre-approval inspection and get you a CRL or get you an OAI, which we don't have that in this finding, but you'll find that the OAI issuance rate over kind of your standard is about 3 times the amount on pre-approval inspections. We'll do a better job on the next PAI webinar of getting that data in here, but we'll dig into the details, and I think you'll find it enlightening. And so before we do this, before we kind of go into the trends, we need to talk a little bit about how we did. So the first piece is we have these proprietary machine learning models. So we take warning letters, we take 483s, and we parse out the individual content. So on a 483, it's, you know, taking out the observation, the primary area, which is kind of the first sentence, and then everything kind of following this specifically, or for example, as a secondary citation. What we're going to do here is we're going to talk about the primary things that were cited on those 483s. We then create a combination of kind of expert dictionaries and machine learning to tag those observations. And we use frameworks like 211, UDRLEX, Health Canada CRC codes, et cetera, to map those terms or those codes back to a proprietary model that Jerry and Barb helped create, who I thanked earlier. But basically it's mapping those text strings to a quality system label. And then once you've done that, you can have all sorts of fun trending and reports, of which I'm going to show you some of them today. And so, here's just a sample of our model. So it's very high level. So it's 6 quality systems across the top, plus 11 data integrity categories. But this is based on tens of thousands of different rules and mappings that we've made. So you'll recognize the hopefully you'll recognize these quality system categories. So starting over here on quality system on the left. So these are the responsibilities of the quality unit. So things like CAPA, things like investigations, things like annual product quality review, risk management, training, et cetera. Then you have packaging and labeling, facilities and equipment, materials, labs, production, sterile and non-sterile, and then 11 data integrity categories. Okay. And so this is the type of output that the model generates. And so once again, this is like in our platform. So we just pulled a query from our databases to create these fun charts for you today. But this is a sample output. So you have the quality system labels. We infer, CFR and other codes from the text. And then you have the text of the 483 itself. So there's a failure to thoroughly review an unexplained discrepancy. That is that is a deviations and investigations label. So hopefully you'll just see kind of at a high level how it works. There's a lot of there's a lot of details behind the screen, but at a high level, this is the data that we're going to review and how we created it. Okay. And the other piece is we're reviewing. So from 2017 to 2022, we have 1,500 observations from pre-approval inspections and more than 400 483s that we're reviewing in these charts. Okay. All right. Without further ado, this is a chart that walks through the top issues that were cited on pre-approval inspections. So you'll see that the top 6 issues accounted for about 41% of the findings. The next 5 issues, about 55%. The next 10 issues here. And then there's about 50 plus issues that kind of get you there. So the 80-20 principle completely holds, as with all things data. You focus on 20% of the items, get you 80% of the volume here. And what we shared here, so we've kind of blinded this a little bit, but we're going to deep dive into kind of these left 3. So the top item cited are quality systems, deviations, and investigations. So failure to review discrepancies or batch failures or things like that happening here. The second one, quality system inadequate. Well, what is that? Well, we're going to deep dive into this a little bit, but it is your quality unit does not have the responsibility, is not writing the effective procedures, or just hasn't written them at all. So these are just major quality unit failings on pre-approval inspections. I found this to be absolutely fascinating that something at that level could happen on a pre-approval inspection. Not only could it happen, but it's the second most cited item. And this isn't just happening at, random people in parts of the world that a lot of us, aren't focused on. This is happening at top sponsors and top CMOs of just flat out failure of the quality units to kind of do a key portion of their responsibilities. And then the next is laboratory controls, what we're going to dig into what that means. But this is like lack of scientifically sound laboratory controls to identify the identity, purity, and strength of the drug. So we're talking like pretty key issues here getting cited on these pre-approval inspections, which I found very enlightening. So we're going to dig into some of the the actual findings on this quality unit inadequate. Okay, so quality inadequate, exclamation point. What are we talking about here? Well, top 10 global sponsor, no written procedures for production and process controls. Not procedures are inadequate, no written procedures for production and process controls. Another top 10 global sponsor and generics firm. Your quality unit failed to fulfill its duties and responsibilities. Anytime the FDA says quality unit failed, those three words, those are, you might want to keep reading on that. That's a pretty big one. And so once again, this isn't, I made sure to only pull examples from, top sponsors and top CMOs here, not, some generics firm without a solid quality unit, And so then once again, your quality unit failed to draft and adequately implement standard operating procedures. And then there are no written procedures to link the process by which escalated deviations can initiate a product recall. This is pretty important stuff. This happened at a top 5 CMO. You would know their name. You would know the name of this one, and you would know the name of this one. So the state of what I see is that the state of pre-approval inspection preparation is well off what I think the intuition of the industry is. From a preparation standpoint, from a depth of analytics standpoint, and just an effectiveness standpoint. And so really we get this label, and this is what the intent of this label, this quality unit inadequate is meant to do. So, you're responsible to review and approve all SOPs and ensure that those SOPs are in place. And if there's bad SOPs, you're probably not doing your job. Right. So this is kind of how we came up with this. Once again, this is our model. You can quibble with, our approach, but this kind of describes our approach to this issue. Okay. So now let's move on. But we decided to take it a little further. So we took this model and we decided to put it into 3 areas. So we decided to take all these tags and labels and say, okay, what is potentially critical? Okay. So there's 100+ tags, but what is the stuff that really matters, right? So this is stuff like testing into compliance, lack of scientifically sound laboratory controls, quality unit inadequate, right? That they could lead to, quality system, fundamental breakdowns that could lead to really bad things. The second is we decided to map everything to potential cultural issues. Now you could be both. You could be both also critical or cultural and not critical. And these are actions that potentially result from, cultural attitudes. Okay, we've always done it this way. So this is failure to investigate, CAPAs, training, et cetera. So things that are kind of quality system, culture related. And then the third is potential product safety issues. So, things that could cause microbiological contamination or actual evidence of cross-contamination or lack of sterility control and things like that. So these are the 3 issues. And so the one that we're going to dive into too. So by the way, if you're interested in seeing our analysis on this, you can reach out to us separately. We're not going to go through all of these. We are going to go through kind of this top piece and deep dive into the potentially critical issues. But, we've done this analysis and we'd be happy to discuss it with you individually offline. So we're going to dig into these potentially critical issues here. And we found some interesting things. So of the potentially critical issues that we found, once again, there are some really interesting findings, right? So once again, quality unit inadequate, which we already discussed on the previous slide. The second being laboratory controls, but then production process validation inadequate or missing. Once again, you see this a lot. It's like just the process is not validated, or it's just flat out missing for production controls. And you would think on pre-approval inspections that would be pretty nailed, but you're not necessarily seeing that out of the data. And then, flat out just issues with the facility design for the sterile environment. You didn't design the facility to be effectively sterile is the next items that we're seeing. So I have a couple of examples here. Once again, top 5 CMO, laboratory controls are inadequate. Top 10 sponsor, establishment of laboratory control mechanisms are not drafted and by the appropriate organizational unit. Top 10 CMO, do not include scientifically sound and appropriate test procedures. And then this final one was, so we know that there was a CRL from this pre-approval inspection, and it did not, once again, include the establishment of scientifically sound appropriate specifications. So once again, the point of this, the takeaway from this slide is there are potentially critical issues lurking at, if you're a top sponsor, top CMO, potential issues lurking here under PAI inspections. And so then the final piece is just, I wanted to kind of bring that data to life a little bit. So this left-hand chart is potentially critical issues. And now we're counting observations over here. So 1,500 observations. And over here, we're counting inspections. And so about 44% of all observations on pre-approval inspections, we've tagged as potentially critical, right? These items that we were talking about before: quality unit failed, lack of lab, scientifically sound laboratory controls, production not validated, production processes not validated. But then when you look at it on how many inspections are affected, it's almost 80% of the inspections are affected by these critical issues. So, or actually, I think this is 483s, sorry. 80% of 483s have this issue. This is mislabeled. I need to do that. So, you're gonna get a 483, 70-something% of the time on pre-approval inspection. And when you get a 483, you have about an 80% chance of having one of these potentially critical items. So I would say, my takeaway from that, once again, is just that the state of preparation for pre-approval inspections isn't necessarily what we might think it is or would hope it would be. And you really need to do your diligence on your CMOs and your counterparties, because even if they have a great reputation, there might be something lurking in their inspection history that you're going to want to know about. Okay. And so, without further ado, here are the conclusions that we have come to. So, the FDA's ramped pre-approval inspections back to pre-COVID levels, not to 2017 levels, but back to pre-COVID levels, especially in North America and Europe. North America, they're digging into the backlog. They're almost 150% up what they were pre-COVID, but Asia is lagging way behind. Okay, so if you're CMO or a sponsor in Asia, you might be in a longer queue than in Europe or North America. Second conclusion: you are way more likely to get a 483 on a PAI than common wisdom would think. About twice the rate. 483s are issued about twice the rate than on routine inspections, and the PAI 483 issuance rate is on the rise across all regions, about 20% up from 2017. Your FDA inspector matters. There's some that are going to give you a 483 no matter what, and there's some that almost never issue 483s. And so really, taking a one-size-fits-all approach to your inspection preparation isn't really effective. You kind of have to really understand who that person is that's going to show up and develop strategies to effectively manage that inspection once you get that notification of who's showing up. Next piece is, I would say that a lot of the things being cited, these critical issues, are sort of the basics of running an effective quality unit, at least, from the mentorship that I've been getting from, our customers and experts that work at Redica, like Barb and Jerry. And they seem kind of some of the fundamentals of, quality unit design, investigations, laboratory controls, responsibilities of the quality unit, but you're seeing it pop up a lot on these pre-approval inspections. And once again, that's before we even get into all the environmental monitoring or sterile environment considerations, which is kind of the next giant raft of issues after you get kind of through these, which we didn't dig into today, but you'll just have to take my word for it. And then once again, the final conclusion that I have is that top sponsors and CMOs are not immune at all to these potentially critical issues. So I'm not going to say all sites for all of these things, but this is why you have to look at the entire organization when evaluating, your counterparties or CMOs. Quality is pervasive across the organization, and really finding this specific evidence at maybe a site you're not working with could potentially save you, a big heartache on your pre-approval inspection. Okay, that's all the content that we had for today. So now we're going to do a brief Redica commercial, and then we will take questions. So in 2 minutes or less, so we are an analytical data platform, and we put all of our data and analytics into a nice software package that has nice visualizations and workflows. So what that means is, we have data from hundreds of agencies and standards bodies that we run through a very sophisticated intelligence layer that dedupes, labels, tags data. It's all proprietary to Redica Systems, as I said, like the 483 tagging model that we had. So that's an example of our intelligence layer. And then we have very simple reports, search, and profiles. And I'll show you some of those profiles. So life science companies work with us in 3 primary ways. The first is inspection preparation. As hopefully you see, we have unmatched sort of data and intelligence on inspectors, inspection trends, and counterparty risk, et cetera. The second piece is vendor quality. So we have the full inspectional history of every site that's ever been inspected by the FDA, MHRA, EMA, or Health Canada. You can run deep dive reports on that history. You can look at the entire organization, so not just the site that you're working with. And then you can get do benchmark reports in comparison, and then get alerts on new inspection and enforcement activity. The final way that we help is on regulatory monitoring. We do regulatory change, regulatory and standards change alerts all in one dashboard, all labeled to make it very, very simple to stay on top of kind of global regulatory change. So that's kind of our third way that we help. Here are our inspector profiles. So we have every FDA inspector who's done an inspection since the year 2000. We have everything they've done, everything that they've cited, and in many cases, in some cases, hundreds of 483s and dozens of EIRs on their individual inspections. We have their resumes for all the top inspectors. So really unmatched intelligence as to every single FDA inspector. Next act is that we're putting together MHRA inspector profiles, which we should have before the end of the year. Then we have site and org profiles. So every site that's been inspected by the EMA, Health Canada, MHRA, or FDA, we have that full inspectional history, citation history, and in many cases, dozens of documents on GMP certificates, documents from Health Canada, documents from the FDA, et cetera. It's kind of a treasure trove to support audit and inspection preparation, especially at your CMOs and counterparties. Once again, not just GMP, but across all GXPs. So clinical investigators, IRBs, CROs, we've got it all. And then, simple reports for things. So for example, this is an example of, hey, if you want to see all packaging and labeling observations in Asia in the last 5 years, simple report, and you can, download it into Excel. And we have different visualizations that you can do. So all of those analytics and capabilities that I showed you in our charts, we pulled that from our system and we're able to put it into, simple charts. And then the final thing is we have, organization trees. So what we call family trees. So all the top CMOs, CROs, and global sponsors. So you can follow all of Pfizer's, dozens of subsidiaries at the push of a button, all of AbbVie's, all of Lonza's, all of Patheon's. One click, and you're following them globally and can compare them, their full inspectional history, get alerts, et cetera. So that was it. So Taylor, chat, what questions do we have from the group?
Yes, we have quite a few. One that I want to answer real quickly is that you will be getting a copy of this presentation and the slides, so you can review those at your convenience. First question we have for you, Michael. Can you normalize the number of pre-approval inspections to the number of NDAs and BLAs?
That is a very interesting question. The simple answer is yes. We have not combined those data sets or kind of overlaid kind of the, okay, hey, there's been this many NDAs, people have filed this many approval packages and per year, et cetera, and then you could overlay the inspections. That's something that we can do in relatively short order, but we don't have those approval data sets in our database yet to be able to run those reports. But yes, simple answer is yes, but not right now.
Perfect. Thank
you. It can
you.
be done, and we will do it. And yes.
Good. Okay. Next question. Have we shared these findings / presentation with the FDA to get their perspective? Industry will be surprised by this, but I suspect the FDA would be even more surprised.
So the simple answer is no. So, we have what I would say a cordial relationship with the FDA. We do a lot of requesting through their Freedom of Information Act office. And we try and play nice. So one thing we never do is, even when we give data to reporters or support kind of analytical research from universities and whatnot, is we never talk bad about the FDA. The FDA is the most open and most active agency in the world. Nobody's even close. The fact that we have all of this data is a testament to FDA's, and the US government's approach to openness of information. I'll tell you, Australia takes, even a country like Australia, you would think would be open, absolutely not open. And so that's kind of the first piece. And so the second piece is, that is on our plan at some point to go kind of, take the FDA's data and share it back to them and collaborate with them. That's just not something we've really done yet as a strategy and as a company.
All right, thank you. So of the 6 inspectors that you say cite 100% for 43 observations, are they in a particular division such as CBER or Team Biologics?
Yeah, so this was human drug inspections. I believe the Team Biologic inspections would have been under CBER, so like a Kite Pharma, Bluebird, things like that. That would have been biologics, and we didn't parse out the drug product inspections from the like human tissue, so HCTP facilities. And so we didn't necessarily trust that distinction. So we excluded that from the analysis. So this would not include any of the Team Bio people. And I would expect that 483, just knowing them and knowing their backgrounds, I would expect that 483 issuance rate to be high. And we can take that as a phase 2 of saying, okay, biologic drug product PAI inspections, what does that look like? But those were not included in this data set.
Okay, I can actually answer this next question. How do you subscribe to the Redica blog? So you can do it on our website, and then in our follow-up email, we'll actually have a link for you too. All right, Michael, when you use PAI, do you include both PAIs and PLIs?
I'm not familiar with the PLI. We'll just have to take that one offline. So the data set that we get has the pre-approval. It says pre-approval. It says for cause, and it says routine. There's a couple of different categories for the for cause, like follow-ups and things like that. But the pre-approval inspection literally just says pre-approval, and so we don't have additional information. Now, combining it with other data sets, we have project area. So maybe it's a new drug evaluation or generic drug evaluation or things like that. So there's additional nuance hiding behind this, and maybe that's what you're referring to. But
we actually got clarification. PLI is pre-licensing inspection.
Yeah. So once again, we'll need to dig into that, and I'd like to, we can take that offline.
Perfect. Let's see what else we have here. What is a good and reliable source to obtain standards for medical devices?
If you're talking about so standards for medical devices, I guess it depends on what region you're going with. But you're just talking about like ISO standards and things like that. If you want to have a a more pointed conversation, we actually have a med tech guru in the company, and be happy to connect you with the different sources. I know there's quite a few, depending on whether you're going to Europe, or whether you're going to the MDSAP countries, or whether you're just going to stay with the FDA. There's some different considerations there. So if you want to send us your email, we can get you connected to our guru.
Yes, he said, please connect me to your medtech guru. We can for sure do that. Okay, so this one's more of a comment and referring to the different regions, and they think there may be two issues. Over-reliance on CMOs and great clinical data, making companies, quote, blind to the less, quote, sexy CMC technical compliance work. So that was more of a statement.
That is a statement. That might be true. That might be part of it. I mean, you definitely, yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff isn't always, so I know we talked about a lot about quality unit and inadequate and things like that. And then, what's the relative power between kind of the reg affairs and commercial departments versus the manufacturing and then quality, right? And so, we have anecdotal evidence that, the way an organization is designed certainly matters, right? Is the quality unit reporting to the CEO or, not under operations or not under reg affairs, right? And so there's definite anecdotal evidence of some, and I'm not sure if this is what you were getting at, but I've certainly heard it from, heads of quality and then, other quality leaders that the organizational design absolutely matters. And then sort of appreciation for what it takes to run an effective quality unit, and that culture of quality also really matters to these outcomes. So not sure if I'm addressing your question or just pontificating, but that's what I've heard anecdotally.
Okay. This next question is more of a clarification on what you mean by 50% 483 issuance rate.
Yeah.
So, like a chance of getting a 483 is 50%, or a chance of getting a complete response is 50%.
This is a chance of getting a 483 is 50%. So one inspection, so for every 2 inspections, one 483 is issued. Now, the complete response letter, so it's once again, that's a data set that we're looking to, we can get our, so the FDA will not let us get our hands on the actual complete response letter until the product is actually approved. So if it's not approved and they get a complete response letter and it just goes away, there's no, or if it's kind of an in-process thing, that the FDA have been very clear that they're not going to give the, that's not a releasable document. However, we are trying to find other ways to see that a CRL was issued for GMP concerned, and then go back and link that to the PAI inspection. So it's a project that we have right now that we're trying to do. And then once you can link those events, you can then say, okay, well, what were the GMP issues that might have led to that CRL by looking at those 483s and potential warning letters, et cetera. So that's something that we're trying to do. So we don't know CRL incident rate. So if you don't know what a CRL is, sorry, I got a little note, complete response letter, right? So that's the FDA saying, yeah, try again. Your pre-approval inspection failed essentially for GMP reasons. Other times it could fail for clinical reasons, and that would be really bad. GMP, maybe you can come back and try again, either get your CMO working or get your facility up to snuff, and then try that inspection again. But CRL for clinical issues is even worse news than one for GMP. So we're attempting to link those events and then run statistics on that to try and get some incident rate, and then what are the issues that potentially lead to CRLs. But we haven't quite figured that one out yet.
Gotcha. Okay, next question. Are you seeing FDA hybrid inspections for pre-approval inspections? And how much notice does FDA usually provide before they arrive?
Okay, so I'll take the second one first. Once again, we only know this anecdotally because Form 482 of like, hey, I'm here or I'm coming, then pre-inspection, we can't get those. So we don't actually know how much time or run sort of the statistics, but anecdotal. Once again, anecdotes aren't always correct, but we're hearing that it's a month, at least a month, and sometimes as much as 3 months notice before that inspection. And our customers and just what we're hearing from the industry, that's kind of the average that we're hearing. And then the what was the first question again, Taylor? It was
I scrolled away. Hold on. Oh, are you seeing FDA hybrid inspections for pre?
Okay, yeah, so I'm not sure exactly what you mean by hybrid, if it's like this remote regulatory assessment that potentially then leads to another inspection. If that's what you're talking about, or if you're talking about, mutual recognition inspections, the simple answer is yes, there's a lot going on there. We haven't, so we do recognize in our data set when we think an MRA inspection has occurred, we can identify that in our data sets in our platform, and we have also linked RRA remote regulatory assessments. We have that data set. We haven't done all the linking and statistics to answer a specific pointed question. If that's what you're talking about with a hybrid inspection, the simple answer is we can probably get you what you need. If you're talking about something else, then sorry.
Are our data sets available to news organizations or investigative journalists to research inspection issues in the industry?
Simple answer is yes. So I think 2 days ago, ABC News, a reporter who we've had a relationship for years, was doing a deep dive into the Coronabacter contamination at Abbott with the infant formula. And the question they were trying to answer was Abbott the only one in the industry that had issues with this? And so they were looking at Mead Johnson, they were looking at Perrigo, they were looking at Nestle Gerber. And we had, dozens of EIRs and 483Rs, dozens of inspection events, for cause, routine, et cetera. And they were able to, so we were able to provide a kind of a treasure trove of data for them to dig through and do their research. And we kind of helped them understand what was going on. And the simple conclusions were Abbott was far from the only company having Coronabacter issues. There were a bunch of other complaints that have been happening for years with infant formula, and the FDA has been on top of it, right? They've been doing for-cause inspections for the last couple of years at these various facilities, and it's only recently kind of come out in the news. But then also we saw that some of the facilities were really good and some of the facilities were not so good. So any case, so the simple answer, long story long, the answer is yes. We love to support analytical research. That's what we consider our role in the industry. We will not badmouth the FDA because, once again, they're the most open and sophisticated and complete agency in the world. Nobody's even close. So we're not saying, hey, the FDA is doing good or bad. We're just saying, here's what's happening, right?
Yes. All right. So with our data, can we analyze cell and gene therapy separately from biologics and drugs?
Believe so. Yes. Not always crystal clear on the inspection event what kind of inspection it is, but it's certainly a biologics inspection. If we have the 483, there's a helpful little field that says type of establishment inspected, and it will have cell and gene therapy facility, and we can parse it out. So it's hard to get statistics, like official statistics, like a chart, right? Because there's just not enough data points to draw lines. But we can give you statistical anecdotes, as they say, from cell and gene therapy inspections.
Okay. And I don't believe I asked this one yet. What was the time frame for the top 6 issues in PAI observational findings?
Time frame for every single chart was 2017 to May 25th, 2022. It's kept the same time frame on everything.
Perfect. And I believe this is our last question, unless we get some others coming in. Do you find that the EMA is doing inspections for MAA?
MAA or MRA?
It might have been a typo. Let's see. MAA.
You're going to have to define that for me. I can get on Google. I've never heard it. I know what an MRA is. I don't know what an MAA is.
All right, let's give it a second. Let's see. Oh, MAA is Marketing Application Authorization.
Oh, okay. Geez.
Acronyms today.
Yeah, we don't at this current juncture have the ability to parse out the reason for the EMA inspection. We can once again, combine it with some other data sets to potentially get some anecdotal linkages of, okay, here's a new site that's being registered, or a new API facility that's being registered, new product coming on the market, and link those data sets. We have not yet done that for the EMA.
Gotcha. All right, well, I believe that is all of our questions to the attendees. If y'all have anything that pops in your head afterwards, you can reach out to us at Redica, and we'll be happy to answer anything for you. Michael, thank you for presenting for us today, and we hope to see you all at the next webinar.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Goodbye.